Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down
It's the Truman Show!
the movie's now celebrating its 25th anniversary, and a brand new 4K Blu-ray has just released. After picking it up, I just had to break down this film, as there's so many deeper layers to it that I'd not seen before. It's one of those movies that was ahead of its time, and it predicted several things about the next 2 decades. This included the rise of reality TV, and also how much of our privacy started being put out there. All of it was done in the name of entertainment, which people now do freely with social media and YouTube. So yeah, lots of things I want to analyse, along with all the hidden details that I think you might have missed in it. This includes all the hidden cameras, like that one in his wedding ring. And in flashbacks, we can see his dad wearing this during the voyage, in which he apparently drowned, and Truman taking this also explains why he never takes it off. We'll also be talking about how you can spot the clothes in the show being worn by the viewers, and this is because everything's for sale. It's all to make money, and it's all exploiting a human that a corporation owns. Now, this darker ideology was laced way more through the original script, with the idea being created by Andrew Niccol. Originally titled The Malcolm Show, the first draft was more of a science fiction thriller set in a city akin to New York. Truman was an alcoholic, and his wife was also pregnant, with his child being the one that would carry on the show. There were also staged crimes which Truman refused to intervene in, with the cast and crew often questioning why he didn't help. In the end, he came face to face with Christoph and all the actors who'd played his friends and family. Lunging at Christoph, he then tried to strangle him, unleashing the rage that the revelation brought. We closed out with him being reunited with Sylvie, but it was a far more downbeat portrayal of how Carrey plays it. They also went with several directors as well, and Brian De Palma was initially in negotiations. This fell through though, and then they asked Tim Burton, Sam Raimi, Terry Gilliam, David Cronenberg, Barry Sonnenfeld, and Steven Spielberg before Peter Weir finally signed on. Deciding on a more light-hearted tone, he ended up looking to Jim Carrey, who too was looking to be taken more seriously as a dramatic actor. Though the actor commanded a fee of $20 million at the time, he dropped this down to $12 million to be part of the film. His schedule was also pretty complicated too, with him working on both The Cable Guy and Liar Liar. Weir ended up delaying production for a full year because he felt that Carrey was perfect for the role. Niccol also rewrote the script 12 times, and a lot of inspiration was taken from Michael Jackson. Weir said the singer's life had been turned into a show and that they wanted to document what it would be like if that was taken literally. Depicting the life of Truman, they settled on that name because he's the true man in a world full of actors. The surname Burbank was also taken too because the entire show shot in Burbank, California. In fact, if you look at all the names in the film, these actually pull from real-world things. Marlon's named after Marlon Brando, and his off-screen wife's called Rita after Rita Hayworth. Truman's wife Meryl's named after Meryl Streep, and his upcoming love interest's called Vivian Lee. Truman's dad's called Kirk after Kirk Douglas, and his mum's named Angela after Angela Lansbury. Sylvia's show name is Lauren Garland, with a surname of course being a reference to Judy. Now, these being actors is, well, because they're all actors, and the locations in the town also carry this too. Barrymore Street's named after Drew Barrymore, and Wells Park is a nod to Orson Welles. James Stewart Street, well, you know with that, with Lancaster Square being Burt Lancaster. Now, that takes us into the film itself, and the movie opens with Christoph talking about Truman's appeal and why the world's become fascinated with him. He says that people became bored with actors and special effects, and that they craved something real that was actually authentic. Inadvertently predicting reality TV, we'd see as this became something that was a phenomenon in the noughties. Even today, the shows are still popular, but it's fair to say the audience has become way more sophisticated. Deep down, we know that it's manufactured too, which this movie also somewhat predicted. Interestingly, Dennis Hopper was originally in the role of Christoph, but he walked off after the first day. Jack Nicholson was then offered the part, but he turned it down due to being friends with Hopper. They also offered it to Jonathan Pryce, who you might remember played a similar role in Tomorrow Never Dies. Now, he was on holiday at the time, so he couldn't get the script because this was back before things were done through email. In the end, they settled on Ed Harris, who's actually only 12 years older than Carrey is. Realizing a 12-year-old couldn't be a television executive that adopted a newborn baby, the makeup department had a challenge on their hands. However, they made Truman look younger and Christoph look older by having things like wire-rimmed glasses and dark, muted clothing. In the end, I really think it works, and you totally believe that Harris is old enough to be like this. The cast names come in, and I love the way this plays out, giving us the idea that these are real people. We see interviews, talking heads, and the title card popping up while Truman nonchalantly talks into a mirror. Now, this itself contains some symbolism later on, as he gets a bar of soap and ends up drawing an astronaut in it. Astronauts, of course, leave their world behind and travel into new ones like Truman at the end. The mirror's edge, that also creates a box around him, and he's finally heading out into this different life. Now after this, we see as he goes into the street where he greets the neighbors and drops this line.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
I kind of feel like this was told to him by someone else, and he's just repeating it as part of his catchphrase. Now why this is, and it's a theory time, is because the show broadcasts 24/7, so it would need a universal greeting due to all the different time zones. Some people watching this would be seeing it at night, but this covers all the bases and means that it works for everyone. Now from here he goes out to his neighbor, whose bin we can see has a camera on it. Later on when he pops up to check Truman in the car, we can see as he positions this to get a better angle. Now from this point, a skylight comes crashing down, and we see as Truman goes to check it. On the posts, we can also see cameras there too, pointing in every direction, so there's always constant coverage. Now this light has a really cool detail on it, and we can see that the sticker has the word Sirius. Sirius is actually the name of a star, and this was likely one of the ones used to light up the dome's sky. Now the cover up on this is instantly brought up with us getting this message over the car radio.
Just then, an aircraft in trouble began shedding parts as it flew over Sea Haven just a few moments ago.
This is them just doing things to try and explain what happens, so he stays stuck in this fake reality forever. Keeping Truman stuck in the dome is of course central to the show's success, and throughout the movie they try several things to make him scared to leave. I kind of feel this message of a play might make him scared to get in one, and therefore he never feels like he wants to leave the island. Truman also works in insurance, and thus he's someone who has to constantly sell something that talks about danger. I'm guessing this would cause him to be way more fearful in life, as he spends his day talking about ways people can die. Either way, the radio itself seems to answer him back, showing that there's this constant spotlight on him. We hear this.
Comply with classical drive, so why don't you forget about the perils of flying? Settle back and let this music calm you down.
And you might notice that most of the songs in the movie are classical pieces. This is because they're all public domain, and therefore the show wouldn't have to pay for any of their usage. Now there is one song we'll talk about later on that isn't, but even this has been altered in a certain way. Now from here we cut to a newsstand where we see Harold buying a paper. Now this character actually gets a nod later in the movie when we cut to a collage at Sylvia's. We can see that she's reached out for help from other cast members, including this news vendor who sadly didn't go through with it. Now at this point, Truman rushes through the streets, which is where he's stopped by the twins who constantly appear throughout the film. These used to stall him in front of the Kaiser Chicken advert and help to add some product placement to his morning stroll. As we learn, the show airs without commercial interruptions, so they have to integrate the products into every single scene. In the wide shot, we can also see a camera at the top as well, and a little drain underneath the wall. Now I don't know you mate, but if you know about construction, then you'll know you don't put a wall up over a drain like this. This would be completely cut off from the way the pipes are, and having a half drain here shows the building probably isn't real. Instead, I think they just stuck up a wall like this so it'll look like a real place, when in reality it's probably a fake building. And the twins here were actually on-set security guards who we're watched getting along with the cast and crew. In the end, he decided to give them a part, and I love how they kind of bring a sort of surreal feeling to the movie. I've got twins myself, but you know what I mean. It's just seeing them looking exactly alike adds a feeling of it being almost like they're clones or something. I know they're not clones, but you get what I'm saying. Now at his office, we see Truman desperately trying to find Sylvia, and he even cuts eyes out of women's magazines to try and make a collage of her.
I see you like cutting the eyes out of photos of women. My son is a big fan of that too.
We also see as his boss tests him to see if he's willing to go off island, and turning this down reassures them that he's not trying to leave. However, his heart longs for the sea, which we actually see right next to his desk nameplate. To the left we have a boat, and to the right is a lighthouse, which foreshadows the journey that he makes at the end. Going out to the ferry, even the dialogue here is used as a way to play upon his fears of the sea.
One way or return?
Return.
We also see as the camera rotates that the blinds open up, showing that they're controlled electronically by its movement. Littering the dock with a sunken boat, this causes crippling fear in him that keeps him stuck on the island. It's such a smart way to keep him locked in, and it's something he has to overcome in order to escape. From here we cut to his wife Meryl arriving home from work, which is when she drops an advert, which I think is hilarious.
Look what I got free at the checkout. It's a chef's pal.
It's a dicer, grater, peeler, all in one. Never needs sharpening, dishwasher safe.
Wow. That's amazing.
Now we can see Truman also digging in the garden, using a trowel to move about the dirt. Later on when he digs out the basement, we can see this tool in the hole, carrying across from this exact moment. I do kind of wonder if he was planning this all along and slowly digging his way out of it, you know, Shawshank style. Something about his life is just so manufactured, and you do wonder if he'd start to suspect just by how fake it is. Now, there's actually a medical condition which is known as Truman Syndrome, in which people believe that there's a show built around their life. I'm sure all of us, at some point we've suspected it too, and I think that's why this film just feels so relatable. Just something about it kind of hits home with everyone, and it's obviously steeped in paranoia and feeling like the world is fake. Let me know below if you've experienced it too, and I have to admit I have felt that way as well. Then I realised that for about 8 hours a day, I sit in a room making YouTube videos, so I don't know how interesting that would be to watch. Anyway, from here we cut across to Marlon, who's about to drop the best ad that you've ever seen.
That is a beer.
Later on when he goes looking for Truman, he also leads with these cans in shots so that we get the focus solely on them. Throughout the movie, we often cut to the Truman Bar, which also happens to sell this exact beer. Everything is leading that, and like them, we've got some bills to pay too. However, they're good ones, mate, and if you like these classic movie breakdowns, then I've actually got a deal that I think you're gonna love. Us and Arrow Films, we've started up a partnership where viewers of this channel get 10% off. Whether you want RoboCop 4K, the Hellraiser collection in 4K, the Chucky ones, or whatever you want, just use my link and pinned comment for 10% off. If you forget, then just use the code HEAVYSpoilers at checkout, and that's a fine deal. Anyway, Truman talks about leaving his job and getting off the island, and Mullins uses a way to show how good his life is. The movie kinda asks the question if you'd actually want to leave this life because everything in it is keeping him from danger. It's very much an idyllic utopia distant from crime where someone basically has everything they need. However, what Truman wants is some real connections, and we see as he remembers what happened to his dad. Later on, the actor ends up returning, and it's kind of like the dead star in a soap who comes back 20 years later. Looking at you, Harold. Now, as Truman sits on the beach, we see as a lightning bolt strikes up the sky. Slowing this down, we can actually see the bolt lights up the moon too, which is something that wouldn't happen in real life. This hints that it's actually fake, and we later learn this is where the command center is. Now, after doing a rain dance, Truman goes to Merrill and talks about how he wants them to go out on an adventure. Whereas the trappings have been fear-induced before, here we see as they're kept as being financial burdens.
We have mortgage payments, Truman. We have car payments, but we're just going to walk away from our financial obligations?
All this stuff is something that ends up holding you back, and it's also used as a way to keep Truman in place. He's unhappy at his job, unhappy in his marriage, but these burdens are things that have stopped him from leaving. Now, as Meryl stands up, we get a good look at her dressing gown, which we can see is grey with white flowers on it. Later on, we see one of the old women viewers rocking this too, showing that this is an item of clothing that the show sells. Cut to some security guards.
You never see anything anyway. They always turn the camera and play music, and the wind blows in and the curtains move, and you don't see anything.
This is a technique that they often use in shows when showing a sex scene would cause the ratings to go up. Is it ratings to go up? Get an X rating anyway. Now from here we cut to the news vendor and see a front page that's made to keep him squarely on the island. The headline reads, "Who Needs Europe?" and talks about a neurologist moving out to Sea Haven. This sells the idea that the grass isn't greener, and they hope it'll keep him locked in this place. Coming face to face with his dad on the street, he's snatched by security and then Truman's stalled. Man's hit with joggers and then a bus escapes, taking him away before Truman can ask questions. Also, I love how you can see the little dog running off in the background who'd just been held by the woman at the newsstand. She was the one who grabbed Truman's dad and obviously just put the dog down so that she could go after him. Now as Truman chases after it, he's stopped by a taxi, and on an archway we can read a Latin saying. This says "Unus pro omnibus, omnis pro uno," which translates to one for all for one. It actually originates from the Three Musketeers, but in this film it has another meaning. All for One talks about the town being built up for this one man, and One for All is about how Truman provides entertainment for all. At this point we cut to Truman's mother, and she desperately tries to downplay the idea he's just seen his dad. Still though, he looks through his old photos before it's interrupted by Merrill advertising more stuff.
We really ought to throw out that mower. Get one of those new elk rotaries.
Genuinely, best moment in the movie for me, that. It just cracks me up seeing Truman's reaction. Sitting with Sylvia's sweater, we then go back to where they first met and see how Meryl ended up being forced upon him. Even when it comes to love, he didn't have a choice, and his entire life's been forced down this narrow path. At the dance we hear, and this is actually a cover of T-Rex's 20th Century Boy. However, it's been changed. You can hear it's a 50s rock song, and this is to further fit the aesthetic of the show. All the clothes the civilians wear have this generic 50s style to them, and it keeps things more in line with what's seen as a more wholesome time in America. Now in the library, Truman finally meets Lauren, or Sylvia, and we see as her face lights up like she's talking to the most important person in the world. It's such a good performance, and you instantly see her struggling to hold back and stay in line with the show whilst also following her heart. As they walk out, we can also see a stand of library books with what I counted to be 4 atlases amongst them. I'm guessing these were put here so he could discover the world through books, instead of him feeling like he actually had to go. Running off into the night, this is the first time he's truly free, and you can see why he'd obsess over the feelings Sylvia brought to him. She also tries to tell him about the truth, which is when her quote-unquote father shows up. Escorting her off without raising the alarm, he tries to play it off that she's crazy.
You're not the first. You're not the first. Truman! She brings all her boyfriends down here.
Still though, love at first sight can't be defeated, and this also explains why Truman's desperate to move to Fiji.
Fiji. We're moving to Fiji.
Fiji?
We learn that he married Meryl on the rebound, and since then he's longed to be back with her. In a way, I also kind of feel bad for Meryl, cause she'd know that he's in fact obsessed with this other woman. And the next day, the radio goes haywire and plays a security feed including him almost running over a woman.
Oh my God, we knew it was something wrong. Change frequencies.
The radio DJ rattles off about driver safety, and we also see a reaction to his dad's appearance. On a newspaper, we catch the headline talking about cracking down on the homeless, adding a reason to why he got escorted off. In the top left, we can also see it's number 10,765, which is roughly around 30 years. At the Truman Bar, we get a shot when we cut to the TV, and can also see that there's a 30th anniversary badge up on the wall. This dates Truman's age, and also gives us an idea of how long this guy's been stuck in this prison for. I feel like the movie is sort of a metaphor for a midlife crisis in which someone wants to break free and do something different. We also see all the actors repeating too, including the guy who walks in the turnstile who popped up earlier. Going off track, Truman then starts to suspect that he's actually in the spotlight. Everything's an act, but no one can break character, and the background extras playing to this too. We can catch a guy walking around picking up litter, but if you look closely, you'll see that he's not actually grabbing anything. Truman then heads to a bench, and we cut to a couple who are played by both Robert and Daryl Davis. Huge shoutouts to numerous lemon on Reddit for pointing out that these two actually founded Seaside, which is the location they shot the movie at. They agreed to it being used as a set, and as a thank you, they got to cameo in the movie. By catching a man from the newsstand before spying on him, he basically goes prototype Bruce Almighty and stops traffic whilst also running into a building. Watching people get into an elevator, these are later shown to be behind the scenes, with the actors from the other doors standing behind it getting food. This is something Meryl later has to cover for, and the story is the elevator malfunctioned. As he's thrown out, we see the building is called Omnicron, with the word potentially being linked to omniscient. Huge shoutouts to Wooden Book on Reddit for that one, and it could hint to how Truman has an all-knowing presence around him. Running to Marlon's store, we then see the character loading up a vending machine. Knowing he has to look like he's doing something, you can see him taking out bars when Truman has his back turned. He then puts them back in, and it's all just done as an act to make himself look busy. About the shop, we can also see a woman with a red and white hat, and later on this is an item that's shown to be something viewers can buy. Going back to the beach, we then see Marlon selling how good that life is.
Look at that sunset, Truman. It's perfect.
Now in reality, it's impossible for the moon to be as full as that in front of the sun. Marlon also calls it the big guy, likely referring to it being where his boss Christoph is at. Big Guy, spelled M-O-O-N, and with his mother we also see a photo album of some of his early memories. These include Truman dressed as a clown and behind bars. This symbolically shows us Truman's a clown who's solely alive to entertain, and the bars he's behind are the prison that he lives in. Now this photo album, that's been brought out to make Truman think he's actually left the island before. They do this by focusing on a picture of Mount Rushmore, but if you look closely, you'll see it's a crudely made set. Meryl then points to her bridesmaids and says,
Oh, look!
Jean, Jody, Joanne.
Huge shout out to Mike23 Pizzo on Reddit for pointing out they're all nondescript brunettes whose names start with a J. This means that Meryl won't struggle to remember them and can just rattle off names that begin with a J. Putting on the TV, we then see a movie picked out especially for Truman.
A hymn of praise to small town life, where we learn that you don't have to leave home to discover what the world's all about.
Though he slumps into a life of acceptance again, he quickly snaps out of it when he catches a photo of Meryl crossing her fingers. The jig is up, and he realizes she wasn't doing it sincerely, and I think this is the defining moment in the movie. It's also one of the first things I remember figuring out as a kid, and maybe this one detail sent me on the life of becoming a loser.
Sad. Anyway, wish me luck.
I'll cross my fingers for you.
Cut to a shot where we see how quickly it turns from night to day, highlighting the sun itself is controlled by Christoph. Now, due to them living in a dome, Truman's never actually experienced natural sunlight. Thus, he'd have a vitamin D deficiency, which we see them make up for in the next shot. This appears as Truman sits and tunes his radio, and we can catch a massive tub of it just to the left-hand side. Now, after hearing Meryl's story, he follows her to work, where we see him going deep into the set. Love how there's a group of people in wheelchairs trying to stop him, and an orderly as well. No one wants to drop the act though, and rather than letting Truman know, they have the surgeon actors start. Now from here we cut to a travel agent where we see a very, very big airplane risk poster and a member of staff with a tissue around their neck. Typically, this is something actors have put on when makeup artists are doing up their faces, showing she's just had it quickly done because he arrived at the shop. Obviously, they really wouldn't have anyone ever working in this, so yeah, they've just quickly grabbed someone off the street probably and been like, go, 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 go. Now getting a bus to Chicago, we see the shocked faces when he first gets on and a kid points him out. The driver ends up stalling it, and I love how you can see sweat running down his face as he apologizes to Truman because he's just managed to stop him. Sitting in his car, Truman then points out all the looping civilians, showing the surveillance system and extras that they have set up on the streets. As he reverses out in the car, we see further indoctrination in the state's motto, with it simply saying it's a nice place to live. Driving out with Meryl, you can tell he's starting to go stir crazy, and I imagine you would just being stuck in this prison. Now he just wants to go wherever he can because he wants to get out and doesn't care where it is. Blocked by traffic, this ends up clearing out when it seems like they're heading home. Getting to the bridge, we see a sign in the bottom right saying that you're now leaving Sea Haven. If you look closely at the bottom, you can also see it has a line of text that says, "Are you sure it's a good idea?" Forcing Meryl to steer, they make it across where forest fire warnings hint at what security measures they have. This is set up just before the pair hit the nuclear plant, which we can see is having a meltdown. It's clear that Christoph's pulling out all the stops to make it seem convincing, but after the officer says,
Thank you for your help.
You're welcome, Truman.
thus he heads into the forest, but before getting caught, you can see that the trees there are planted in rows and lines. This creates what looks like a corridor, and it would obviously never happen in nature, showing that the forest is artificial. As for it and the plant's purpose, I actually have an idea, and I think this part of the island has its practical uses. The trees would help to provide oxygen inside the dome, and the power plant could of course provide power. Back home, I also love the way the cop on the left acts, and he's just peering in trying to check Truman out. You have to realise that this would be like seeing someone famous like Santa Claus in real life, but to be fair, I've actually met him. Just the way he does his little hat tip too. You can tell this actor's trying his hardest, and it's so funny watching how the extras act around him.
Why don't you let me fix you some of this new Mococo drink? All natural cocoa beans from the upper slopes of Mountain Nicaragua, no artificial sweeteners.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
I've tasted other cocos. This is the best.
And this ad being delivered by Meryl while having a clear breakdown just shows the demands that people have to stick with the commercials. Now, if you've been enjoying us going back through these classic movies, then check out our classic movie breakdown merch just below the video. Got a bloody Terminator and Xenomorph inspired design, and all the all help videos like this get made and mean that I won't have to go on a killing spree. Yay! Now, Meryl breaks character and then asks for help before Marlon's sent in as a last-ditch attempt.
How can anyone expect me to carry on under these conditions? It's unprofessional!
Taking him to a bridge, we then get a line that shows how the actors take holidays and vacations.
Remember that time I stayed up with you all night in your tent? Because you wanted to play North Pole? And I got pneumonia?
You were out of school for about a month.
Getting a peek behind the curtain, it's at this point that we see Christoph's feeding lines to Marlon. I love how we have him saying that he'd never lie to Truman while we see him putting up a facade of being his best friend. Really exemplifies how manipulative and messed up this whole thing is, and it's at this point his father returns from the dead. He's the one who started this existential crisis, and thus the hope is that getting him back will make Truman remain in the fantasy. Now during this bit, we cut to the reactions of the world, including a Japanese family. Up on the wall they have some pictures with text in them which translates to the words, "Everyday Truman." He's very much seen almost like a religious figure, and this is shown in the Love Him Protect Him t-shirts we see the security wearing. Now it's at this point that we see the happiness that the creative team have, juxtaposed with Sylvia being furious. She's seeing Truman stuck in this box that represents the prison he's in, and over the top this is used to sell ads. He's being completely exploited and not seeing any of the money himself, with Truman basically being a slave that was born into servitude. Cut to Harry Shearer playing Mike Michaels, and as we learn, he's about to interview Christoph. Around the world we see people getting ready and can catch how much Truman's integrated into other people's lives. At the bar there's a woman with a top with his face on, and this is sort of in an Andy Warhol style. You also see a home with several collages and drawings of him, with characters hanging up on the wall. The girl has a Merrill doll, and while the baby cries away, the mother ignores it because she'd rather watch this guy growing up on TV than watch her own child. Now, Christoph appears like a god looking over the city seeing all. Why he's the perfect villain for this is because he's very much the opposite of Truman, and whereas he knows nothing, Christoph knows everything. It's also said,
"Before we begin, I'd like to thank you on behalf of our audience for granting this exclusive interview. We know how demanding your schedule is, and we all know how jealously you guard your privacy."
Showing that he realizes how important privacy is, yet benefits off Truman's being exploited. Surrounding him are countless TVs, which is how he's able to monitor all. It gives the idea that he can see absolutely everything, and on top of this, his ability to control the sun and weather makes him a god. Throughout his life, we can see how people have tried to infiltrate the set, and at one point catch a guy parachuting in, telling him he's on TV. It's likely Sylvia was involved in this, as we can catch that same sign up in her home. You also see how they manufactured ways to keep him on the island, and in the end they manipulated him to the point he'd have a lifelong fear of water, which is what cost him his father. Then we get one of my favourite lines in the movie.
"How do you intend to explain his 22-year absence?"
"Amnesia."
Brilliant.
Just playing up the sub-trope of how they bring back dead actors, and hearing this, it always makes me laugh. Yes, I'm looking at you again, Harold. Now, we learned Truman was adopted by the corporation, and the only reason he was chosen because he was born on the due date. Christoph promises that if Truman truly wanted to escape, that he would, but he says he prefers the cage. As we know though, that isn't true, man, and we learn that they're doing further things that keep him in place. This includes introducing a brand new love interest and having the world's first on-air conception. Having a child like this will keep him further trapped in the prison, and the baby will probably be born into this life as well. Now we then watch as Truman sleeps, with viewers also using him as a way to comfort themselves to sleep too. Bringing up the music, Christoph strokes the screen, and we see the piano being played by Philip Glass. Glass composed a lot of the music in this film, including the piece that he plays here. The next day, Truman does the astronaut bit, but he does this at the end to show that he might be self-aware. However, it seems like he's happy to be back in his own loop, with him going through a lot of things that he did at the start. We see his new love interest teased, and everything looks like it's gonna be okay. However, there's clear suspicion from the other people involved, and from here we cut to Paul Giamatti sat with a newspaper. This is actually open on the LA Times job listing page, showing that he was starting to look at other places due to Truman getting suspicious. Faking that he's asleep in the basement, he does a Shawshank to dig out of his own prison, which is when the town goes into high alert. Marlon's sent over, and in front of the map of Fiji, he then realizes he's headed out, showing that this represents his dreams. Marlon breaks character and speaks directly to the camera, forcing Christoph to cut the transmission for the very first time. The extras and cast mount up and head out, and we see some of them like the travel agent, his neighbour, the new girl at work, and also his parents. The sun gets brought up, and everyone moves to first position to try and start the day like nothing's happened. But Truman is gone, with him facing up to his fears and heading out onto the sea. The boat he sails on has the name Santa Maria, which is named after the one that belonged to Christopher Columbus. This is what he had when he went to the New World, signifying his travel out into a new one. We see as they send the cast out after him, with the bus driver being unable to drive the boat because he's an actor. Left with nothing else, the weather programs an access which localizes a storm directly over the boat. It's such a good way to test the character, you know, he went through this when he was younger, and in the end it shows what he's really made of. People around the world unite behind him because he's what they love, not the show itself, and it reveals the monster that Christoph really is. He's happy to kill Truman if he has to because he wants this complete control over his life. Either way, we know the show is going to end, but he'd rather him die than have him leave because he has control over this. It's classic coercive behaviour, but Truman survives it and comes out on top, which is when Christoph realises that he has to let him go. Now I love the literal fourth wall breaking moment as Truman hits the edge of the dome, and we see that the sky is in fact fake. Going up the stairs, Christoph finally speaks to him, sounding like he is the voice of God. The stairs themselves sort of look like a stairway to heaven, and outside will be the life he gets after his life here. He tells him the truth, but also tries to get him to stay in the world by promising him a life that's without fear. He strokes the screen and pleads that he stays, and in the end wants him to remain in the show. Asking him to respond, we then get the perfect line to end the film with,
In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Gets me every single time. Now, what makes this line so incredible is that Christoph expects some big rousing speech or to stay behind and remain with them in the fake world. Rather than giving in though and doing something that's going to give Christoph what he wants or the perfect ending, he just drops a dumb catchphrase and robs Christoph of getting that final thing. All Christoph wants to do is broadcast the big moments in his life, but him just doing this, it just shuts the entire thing down. Now it also works as its own quotable too, and in a way it's the best FU possible. It's genuinely the perfect way to close out the film, and I can't think of a better way that they could have ended it. We close out with people deciding to watch something else, and it sums up how shallow reality TV is. Now obviously this even predicted that before the boom in the industry, and it's hard to deny how much the Truman Show got these things right. It's easily one of the best films from the past 25 years, and it took Jim Carrey away from being a comedic actor into a completely new direction. When I think back on his career, this is one of the best performances for me, and it won several awards for a damn good reason. I still think it was pretty underrated at the time though, but it's picked up a major following since its release. I really hope you've enjoyed us going back through these films, and hopefully you've got some new stuff to appreciate when you go back and check it out. Huge thank you for checking out the breakdown, and make sure you subscribe for more classic movie breakdowns. We have been releasing these videos early for members, so if you want to check them out before anyone else, then please click the join button. Costs 99 cents a month, makes a big difference to the channel, and you'll get not only audio only versions very early, but also the edits too, so yeah, thank you everyone who's done that. Now our next video, it is going to be Apocalypse Now, and MT's also working on a Spider-Man breakdown as well. Lots of things coming out down the line. I hope to see you over there, and yeah, thank you for all the support. You know, I love doing these videos so much, and I really appreciate that you guys love them too. So with that out of the way, thank you so much, and if I don't see you again, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Peace.